I think you treat a person like a person, you make their world understandable. And if you aren't going to be therapeutic, always be freaking fun. Make this space feel safe for people to explore some of the hardest aspects of their world.
This is Heard Business School, where we sit down with private practice owners and industry experts to learn about the business of therapy together. I'm your host, Michael Fulwiler. This week, I'm joined by New England native Dr. Bryan Harnsberger, a clinical psychologist and co-founder and CEO of Wellesley Counseling and Wellness and Wellesley Neuropsychology and Assessment. In our conversation, we dive into his journey from almost dying in a car accident at 16 to becoming a psychologist, his focus on helping clients with trauma and navigating private practice ownership. We also discuss the struggles of starting a practice, managing student debt, and his approach to growing a business. As you'll see, I appreciate how Bryan balances the serious work of therapy with a sense of humor. Here's my conversation with Dr. Bryan Harnsberger. Enjoy. Dr. Bryan Harnsberger, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Nailed it. You're a New England guy, which I'm excited to dive into. I'm from Seattle originally, but I've lived in New England for the last 5 years. Are you born and raised in the Boston area?
Originally, I grew up in a small farm town in Connecticut, and then went to Rhode Island for undergrad, came up here for my master's and my PsyD. So kind of doing the whole Southern New England tour.
For folks who aren't familiar, how would you describe New England and people from New England?
Kind, but not nice. You know, I think good fences make
Where are you going with that?
Yeah. I think like when introductions are done, people are really, really kind. Just that first front-facing kind of interaction is always challenging in New England.
Yeah. I found people to be very direct as well. Because I think it's like you go to New York City and I feel like everyone's just like in a big rush and people are like pretty rude. But like you go to Boston and people they'll just tell you how they feel. It's like, get the fuck out of the way.
Bill Burr, I think, is kind of like the spirit animal of a lot of Bostonians and New Englanders. Yeah, they just kind of like, they have a shtick.
And like New England is more than just Boston, right? It's also a lot of like more rural areas and kind of countryside.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Connecticut, you're just kind of like born into like a keg tapped at both ends. You have like,
Right.
grew up with New York Giants fans and Yankees fans and Red Sox fans and Patriot fans. It was weird, you know, it's kind of like being on the front line.
Well, yeah, I remember Noah Kahn, the singer. I think he's from Vermont or New Hampshire. He was like, he got some heat because he said Connecticut wasn't really part of New England. So do you feel like Connecticut is part of New England?
I think if you slash it diagonally,
Yeah.
this part is New England. The part over here is an extension of New York.
New York, yeah. All right, let's get into it. So you mentioned you went to Roger Williams, which is in Rhode Island for undergrad, and then you went to the Massachusetts School for Professional Psychology, and then Williams James College for your PhD.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start becoming interested in psychology?
So I have a long story about that. So when I was 16, I got into a really serious car accident and I had to get life started, like helicoptered out to the hospital. I almost died. So I didn't look left and I got T-boned by a guy in a Ram truck hauling a ton of rock, pushed me into a tree. So I suffered a pretty serious mild traumatic brain injury. And after the haze of the hospital stay, I got back and I couldn't go right back to school because cognitively I just wasn't there. It took me a little bit of time to get back there. I remember my Spanish teacher, Senor Mezger, would come over after school to help me out, but it was so hard for me to code switch from English to Spanish. I was fairly fluent and now I can barely string together a sentence. And that really was jarring for me. So my first interest into psychology was with this guy named Dr. Lovejoy, I think out of University of Hartford. And he did my neuropsych and he was able to articulate my experience, my lived experience in a way that I couldn't even articulate. So you're doing all these random tasks and then this guy is saying like, well, this explains, you know, why you're fumbling over your words or why like days, they don't feel kind of consecutive because of the way that your memory has been impaired and the way that your speech has been. And that really got me interested. So when I went to Roger Williams, and I chose there because I partied there before and it was fun. So it wasn't like an academic. And I really tried to crack it doing pre-med, but I couldn't get through organic chemistry too and trying to chain together all the little amino acids. So I said, you know what, I got to stick with kind of like the PhD route. If I'm going to go in psychology, it's not going to be through the MD route. And then I started making my transition to graduating from school with my degree, getting a bachelor's in psychology during 2007. I literally just thought it was a degree for waiting tables, and there wasn't a lot of jobs during that time. So I worked at a residential facility for fire starters and sex offenders, adolescent ones. And that was really tough job. Either you're getting assaulted at work or you have to do, a sweep over once every 4 days. It was exhausting for $12 an hour. And unfortunately, my best friend from college, he moved back to New Jersey during that time and he died by suicide. Never informed us, never left a letter. So I found out on Facebook and then I messaged one of his friends and I had the unfortunate duty of telling everyone from, Roger Williams about his passing. And I remember holding those calls and allowing people to just feel the hurt. And it's a hurt that I knew I'd never wanted anyone else to feel. I was kind of like in a dead end job, at the residential facility. And that's why I decided I'll throw my hat back in the ring. And 2 days before my birthday, I got into Mass School of Professional Psychology for their doctorate program. Ever since then, man, I get to say that, I've been helping people and saving lives as often as I can. It's every day I do it for my buddy Andy. I have like a tattoo of a Yeti on my arm because that's what his nickname was back in the day.
Yeah, I love that. And so was private practice kind of the goal when you went back to school to become a psychologist, or were you not sure at that time what you wanted to do with a degree?
It's so funny because when you get into school, like you have all these little kind of like hopes and dreams. I remember, after my head injury, like in, senior year of high school, like I really wanted to create kind of a one-stop shop. And I wanted to call it like my body, thinking that wasn't going to be trademarked, I got a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to have like a one-stop integrated care shop. Then I got into grad school and I wanted to focus in on neuropsych because that was the one thing that the PsyD kind of stood apart from the LMHCs and, the LIs. So I thought, I'm going to look into this. I have ADHD. It's exhausting for me to read up those reports. That didn't end up being like a wise decision, but luckily the internship years at MSPP allowed me opportunities to just kind of try things on for size. And the thing that I really did love, and it kind of was adjacent with Andy and his passing, was college counseling. So I was originally going to go that route. I had a great internship at Bridgewater, and then I worked pre-licensed but post-doc at Suffolk University. And I liked it there. Did not really care for management, but it's a different story. It helped me learn about how to treat people along the way. And then, yeah, as soon as I got my license, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go into private practice. It's going to be the only way that I'm going to pay off my student debt, which was considerable. It's not cheap to go for a graduate program and live in the Boston area. So
yeah, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that internship. You said that you have ADHD. When were you diagnosed with ADHD?
that actually came out of the neuropsych report from my car accident. So that was
so it was at that time. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. They were really smart in regards to how they didn't want to put me all under the umbrella of the traumatic brain injury. They also wanted to show me like what my executive functioning deficits were. So it was Dr. Lovejoy helped me out in more ways than imaginable.
That's a great therapist name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds made up, but
It does. It does. I can promise. Oh, yeah. Cross-check these references.
right. Yeah. What's the therapist from Ted Lasso? It's like Sharon. Oh, I guess it's Sharon. I think it's like Fieldstone or something. I thought it was Love something, but. And then another just quick question here. How did you decide between a PsyD and a PhD program? And typically, what are the differences between the two?
So for me, in between, I lasted a semester at UMass and it was very research heavy, which would have been predictably the PhD route. And first of all, the individual that I was kind of paired with for the research, it was not interesting. It was talking about doing some kind of event related potentials for individuals with non-epileptic seizures or something of that. And it was not anything that I was interested in, but I had to like fake being interested in it to kind of move my academic career along. And yeah, the problem with work that you don't like is the excuses run dry pretty fast, and then you just burn yourself out. And it happened in a extraordinarily fast manner at that. So I figured, I'm just going to look at PsyDs.
I see. And did you transfer? You transferred schools at that point?
I mean, not necessarily transfer. I just like dropped out and cut my losses,
Yeah.
bumped up my hours at the work, and then yeah, just waited to apply for the
Yeah.
next round. And I tried like doing a tour of other programs, in Texas, all over, but I didn't want to venture that far out. And I had like the nice connection with Boston back in the day. Yeah. So here I am.
So you're in this internship in this is your master's program or PhD program,
So it
where
was
you
a
said just the
PhD.
management was like not great.
Oh, yeah. So I graduated, and that was
Okay.
in between, graduation and my licensure, passing my exam. For my boss, it was very notes heavy, kind of writing process notes for everything. It was during a time where everyone, went on either medical leave or maternity leave. So I was kind of the workhorse. And my boss and I have a very particular personality, and I know it's not for everybody. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those lessons that you learn that you either have to be highly competent and very agreeable with certain bosses. And if you are not, you're going to always catch a glare or be under their radar. And they're going to start looking at the procedural things that you do and wanting to kind of create their own narratives for it.
When you say you have a particular personality, what do you mean by that?
I like to think of myself as being pretty open and irreverent and expressive in a way where I am exercising good judgment, but I'm very playful. And some people, especially if you're looking to create like a sterile professional environment, you stick out.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So,
that's
yeah.
something that I observed about you just from Twitter, which is how we initially connected. Was like, oh, he's this like, Dr. Bryan. He's has like a pretty decent sized following on Twitter, but he's posting memes and, it just like doesn't take himself too seriously. And it's like, oh, that's a guy that I want to meet and connect with. Right. Because I think so much of the field, especially psychology, I feel like is very like stuffy and academic. And I think people just take themselves too seriously.
And like, yeah, that you got to take off the therapist hat. And the funny thing about Twitter too is like the reason that I got a following wasn't because of psychology. It was because I was blocked by Donald Trump. And and we like,
How did that happen?
yeah, I
Yeah.
joined a class action lawsuit and like he had to unblock. So
That's
it's the most ridiculous story. But yeah, I never really saw it as like a professional based thing. I literally just was tweeting through that entire administration, which has been going on for like 10 years now.
right.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that. That's funny.
It got me to meet some of the nicest people and some
Yeah.
of the greatest folks in regards to like social justice and figuring out how I want to integrate that into our own practice. It also got me, getting some negative reviews on, my Google business page from individuals that are like strongly like anti-medication or that have a certain perspective about student loans that I don't share after being publicized in like an article with CNN or something like that back in the day. Unfortunately, you get negative press trying to do good stuff sometimes, and yeah, it lingers.
Yeah. I feel the same way about the industry that we're in at Herd is that it's like a very serious business, right? When you're helping people to manage their money, but we don't have to take ourselves too seriously either. I think being human and like having a personality, people engage with that. And I think it also makes our content and our educational resources a lot more approachable for folks, right? Like if we were just to offer like a super boring, dry tax webinar, like people wouldn't show up, right? But we integrate humor and we make it fun, and like we post memes on social media. And I think that there's something to be said about that, and just in terms of making yourself more accessible, because the work that you do is inherently very serious, right? And like the work with your clients is serious, and why you got into this work is serious. So that part of it's like not a joke, but
Yeah.
I think it's a balance.
I mean, like Marshall Linehan always talks about, like therapeutic irreverence and how important that is. And if you look at humor as a defense mechanism, it's one of the most mature defense mechanisms out there. So if you're not integrating this into your everyday life, you're really missing out on the fun and joy of things. And, yeah, plays are a really big part of life. If you're not shit posting, if you're not taking things too seriously, and you're in a LinkedIn kind of toxic culture environment,
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about the move into private practice. So when you decide, okay, I want to start my own practice, what did that look like? Can you tell me about that?
Sure. So at first I was applying. I remember because I was driving down to visit my friends. We were doing kind of like this staycation at my buddy's place. And I had a call and I had to make a decision about canceling an interview, which is like a big no-no. And it was between a college counseling setting, like a really small one that wasn't going to pay well, or a private practice that looks great on paper. Lo and behold, like I would find out along the way that it was a little bit more challenging than I thought. But I decided to just go with the better paying option at the time. And I figured, if anything, I'm just going to be able to learn about how the sausage is made. And yeah, I called in and I canceled my interview at this one college and decided to move forward into private practice. I wish I could say it was like a very insightful kind of thing, but it was actually made on a whim. And thank God it worked out for me. And I ended up getting this job in like a group practice that had 3 different locations, but the pay structure was horrible. And like I would get paid monthly, and it was incredibly challenging to dig myself out of that early career debt. I mean, I graduated school and I couldn't rub 2 nickels together. I was living with 4 other roommates and just trying to get by. And prior to that, it gets rough when you have to go to the grocery store and you ring up and you have to start putting stuff away and saying like, "Can you return this for me?" I mean, that's really incredibly embarrassing. But that's where I was, and that was in like 2017, 2018. It was a challenge.
And you have your doctorate degree at this point?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm making $50 an hour, and I thought that was pretty good because at community health I was making $28 an hour. And yeah, I thought that was a significant step up. But yeah, it was really challenging to find ways to get clients onboarded. Didn't have a very clear system on how to churn patients in. And of course, nobody tells you that when you get in a private practice, it's so easy to fill up your caseload if you work post 5 o'clock. Back in the day before telehealth, like it was even more challenging. And then getting credentialed. At first, you're just twiddling your thumbs for the first month to 2 months, either getting like 1 or 2 self-pay clients and then a few PPOs. But outside of that, like they didn't have the incident to billing and other kind of ways to have you build a caseload up incredibly quickly when you get hired into a new position. So there was a lot of challenges that I was facing that I was making note of because I didn't want this to happen if I was ever going to captain, a ship myself.
So it sounds like you were, even though you were working for a group, you were responsible for bringing in your own clients.
That's what it felt like. I mean, they had a Google spreadsheet of kind of first touches, and they didn't really have a dedicated staff that would reach out. So it was kind of like first come, first serve. Everyone was like going in as soon as it was released,
Right.
trying to nab up clients. And I'm new. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers, so I'm just kind of like trying to pick and choose the ones. Yeah, it was just not a good kind of environment. So I only spent about 5, 6 months there. And then my buddy David up in Merrimack Valley Psychological Associates opened up a practice. It was just himself at the time. It was Dave Rainin, LLC. And he's like, "Hey, you want to take a chance with me?" I said, "Sure, as long as you're really transparent with how like your policies and procedures." and how you find insurances for clinicians. And you kind of show me everything behind the curtain. And he was a man of his word, and he essentially helped me as I kind of grew with him. We were able to build his practice. Well, he was building his practice kind of as we were flying, and he took a lot of chances, and they all worked out. So I knew that this is something I wanted to do. I worked for him for a year and a half, and then I saw there was an interesting post about the NBA looking to add a wellness kind of policy and division to it. And they appointed this guy, Dr. William Purnell. I think he was out of University of San Diego at the time, to be the director. And I just cold emailed him and I said, hey, I'm really interested in your policy and procedure, not expecting to get like any kind of message back. But then he sent me a packet of information saying like, hey, if you want to be an authorized clinician for, people in the Players Association, get a private practice and fill out all these information. We're going to vet you harder than we vet senators and, Supreme Court justices nowadays.
Which isn't very hard. Yeah.
No, apparently not. But, like looking to see if I had any liability because of all the debt that I had, like really did a deep dive into a background check with me. And I knew, okay, I got to figure out how to set up a business in like 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So a couple Google searches, spent a lot of time at the town hall and got an LLC, went to Santander Bank. They gave me a tax ID number. And then I was just rolling in my own practice that I did as a sole prop for a year or two.
So were you still working with the other guy at his practice?
Yeah. And like I was doing 32 client hours a week with him. And then, yeah. But I mean, when you come from community health, you're booking like 40 people on the regular anyway.
Yeah.
So it didn't really feel like it was necessarily like a step in the other direction. I know it's kind of a culture shift nowadays. And I'm really glad that there's been a shift. We have it so we want our clinicians to see 26 clients a week. A lot different than the way that it was. But yeah, I was seeing like 40 something clients a week. So 32 there and then 8 on 1 day a week. And yeah, as soon as I felt very successful doing that and I found my own biller, I just thought, okay, now is going to be the time for me to move. And then it was around the same time that my wife passed her LMHC for her license. And she's watching me getting credentialed with everyone and saying like, okay, maybe we'll set up a shared office kind of situation. And I was getting steps in Wellesley Counseling and Wellness.
Did she come into the business with you? Do you run it together then?
Oh yeah. I mean, Emily's the lifeblood that goes into everything.
She runs the business. Yeah.
More or less. I mean, like strategically, like I'm the one that is having the final say, hires, policy, things like that. But the person that is there that is curating the cultural space is all Emily. And she's amazing with that. And she's also amazing on staying ahead of like the really small tasks, the things that my brain doesn't catch up on. So it's like a really good filter. So the things that fall through my cracks, Emily grabs it. We work really well together. And it's, couldn't be happier to be married to a person that I have a successful business with. We can always stop and grab each other.
No, that's awesome. So what happened with the NBA opportunity? Did you end up getting that?
Yeah. Yeah. I am licensed with the National Basketball Players Association. So I have folks there. I mean, you just outreach and you try to connect with as many people as possible. Another really cool thing too is I have a friend, Paul Heinzelman, and he runs SetMed. They did a lot of COVID testing at movie production sites in Boston and in LA and in New York. And I met him at Suffolk and we were buddies. And he said like, hey, we had this mental health issue. Can you come in? So, that was one of the other like little partnerships that we made. Another one was, I forget his name, but he's from the UCAN Foundation for unscripted castmates from reality shows. I think that's my wife kind of rubbing off on me as an artist person, really trying to find my way to connect with folks in the different arts and culture realms as possible, as well as the sports.
What was the transition like going from the other practice where you're seeing 32 clients a week to your own practice? Did clients come with you or what was that like?
So essentially it's still kind of like, I'm still seeing the same folks. It's really fun being a provider and meeting with someone that was in 8th grade and having really difficult struggles academically, needing someone to advocate for them, and they're graduating college this year, and being able to see them through that life span. I mean, I have clients that have been with me for 10 years now. I don't churn out a lot of my clients a lot. I get to celebrate a lot of life experiences with them.
That's
But
awesome. Yeah, I resonate with that. I used to coach baseball, and I coached the same group of kids from when they were 14 to when they graduated from high school. And so you just really, it's obviously a different kind of relationship, right? You just get to see them grow up, and it's really rewarding to kind of be that, mentor or figure in their life that has influence.
I mean, like that avuncular kind of uncle-like relationship where
Yeah.
they're able to be open and honest with you and they don't feel judged. It's the best. It's like our job is so incredibly rewarding. And if you're not learning from it still, you should get out of the field. It's not for you.
So what else do you remember about those kind of early days of starting the practice? Sounds like you explored a couple of different partnership opportunities, like had some clients come with you, which is good. How quickly did your caseload fill up? At what point did you start to think about, wow, maybe there's something here where we can expand and bring in other clinicians? Or was that kind of the goal from the beginning?
My story is an incredibly lucky one. So as I signed a 4-year lease, the COVID restrictions hit in 2020. So we just furnished this beautiful new 2-room office and spent all the money that we possibly could there, making a great kind of office space. And then everyone's on telehealth. And then we realized, wow, there's a lot more accessibility here. So Emily and I always had a full caseload. We thought, okay, let's try to find someone like Dave found me. Let's try to find a colleague or a close friend that may not be in the field anymore or isn't practicing full time or, has other life things going on and wants to work in like a part-time kind of scenario. And that's what we did with our first 2 hires. There were people that we knew incredibly well that felt comfortable taking a chance. And that meant, fumbling through interview processes, learning how to onboard clinicians, how to select health insurances, a whole bunch of shit you never went to school for. And you just learn, and you learn to become like an expert in becoming an expert. If there isn't an answer for something, you have to look it up and you have to go in and you have to talk to as many people as possible to figure out those answers. And that means finding the space. It was incredibly disorganized, like trying to figure out those tactics and shit like that early on. When you realize something works, you're like, okay, I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to discard this. Emily and I used to sit together and we would be interviewing together and we're like, oh, this isn't like a really good kind of process. It felt very mom and pop-esque. And we wanted to find a way to professionalize it as quickly as possible. And yeah, it's just a lot of trial and error. And I know it's not like the most helpful advice, but for folks in the field, ones that are particularly risk averse, you can't be risk averse. In order to have a successful private practice, you have to take a gamble and you have to take chances. I think the moment where it went from being a good practice to being a thriving practice happened when I understood the numbers in the bookkeeping and I could tell stories with it. And luckily I have a mother-in-law that is my bookkeeper and she was
That's why you haven't signed up for HERD. Yeah.
yes. Well, she was VP or like SVP.
Yeah. If she ever retires, we're here.
We'll connect. But yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Her feedback is so helpful. And knowing that it's my mother-in-law too, it kind of adds that additional authority.
Yeah.
That you want to
You have to listen, right?
have to listen, or else I'm going to hear it from my wife or my mother-in-law,
Yeah.
father-in-law. When she was able to show me what the numbers meant, it made me feel so much more comfortable to take risks. And of course, duh, right? Like one of the best ways to confront anxieties with knowledge and information. And that's what we teach our kids. So why are we so risk averse going into these things?
Being a therapist is about helping people, not crunching numbers. But when you're running your own practice, managing finances can feel like a full-time job, one you never trained for. That's where HERD comes in. HERD is the financial management platform built just for therapists. No more cobbling together spreadsheets, DIY software, or expensive accountants. With HERD, you get bookkeeping, tax support, and financial insights, all in one easy-to-use platform. Herd was started by an accountant and a software engineer who understand the challenges you face as a business owner. Our mission? To make it incredibly easy for therapists to manage their practice as a business, build wealth, and stay focused on what matters most, their clients. Join thousands of therapists who trust Herd with their finances. Schedule a free consultation today at joinherd.com/consult. When you say take risks, do you mean hiring and just having that overhead? What do you mean by kind of taking risks?
So it's like taking risks as hiring, but for me, I think the ways that I would say like taking risks was like when we opened up like neuropsych for us.
Mm-hmm.
Our clinicians really wanted to continue practicing neuropsych. It's like, forget, like, all right, let's figure out how to offer that. And then, creating a new LLC with a new tax ID. So we wouldn't have to do the managed care route, being credentialed with all these different things, having a whole nother separate place of service, following the letter of the law when it comes to compliance down to a T. Like those were some of the risks. And like, it hasn't been lucrative, but like, that's not where the value is. The value is the fact that like my clinician loves to do this and we are able to actually help people, that are in serious need.
Right.
And because neuropsych gatekeeps so many folks for accessible services. And we're able to make this really formal kind of authoritative stance on things and help people get things that schools and other systems won't allow. So it's a very big area of my life, especially with the idea of justice. And then the other risk is adding more integrative care, like either hiring like expressive arts therapists that I don't really know their modalities, or helping my clinicians get training in EMDR or other modalities that I'm unfamiliar with and just kind of let them cook, or, hiring in a prescriber, and trying to learn that
Right.
aspect of the job. You got to just stay on your toes and keep learning.
Yeah. You recently added medication management. You were telling me, what has that process been like to integrate that into the business?
So at first I was frightened because it's like this whole other area, and you think, oh, like what I have right now isn't going to be transferable for this other position. Lo and behold, like the credentialing process was more or less the same. The onboarding process was more or less the same. I just needed to figure out other little things like where do they get their liability insurance from? What are some of the things that I need to be looking at on their CAQH? That's different than us. So kind of like therapy as discovery, it's just been kind of like business ownership as discovery as well. And I have no idea what it's going to be like when we just started opening up his book. So I'm hoping that our onboarding process is like the exact same. But yeah, like right now, it very much feels like we're flying by the seat of our pants here. And I have faith in the process that we've already discovered. And I don't think we're going to fail. We could. Like, I thought I would have figured out the neuropsych stuff by now, but that's a whole different bear too. But as long as I'm able to keep working and integrating those practices as much as we can, we don't have to be the most efficient. We just need to create the most value for people.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of the stuff you can figure it out. It's like you don't have to have it all figured out before you launch it, and
No.
just like trust that it's going to be okay. And
Yeah.
I imagine you probably have not necessarily formal advisors, but there's probably other group practice owners that you can talk to. Is that the case?
Yeah. I mean, like we have like our little sewing group. I kind of nicknamed us the Cardigan Mafia, and we'll meet like monthly and we'll just all swap tips with like, okay, like I think I had to put someone on a performance improvement plan. Has anyone done this? Or what about, we're trying to figure out new insurances. Does everyone go through the Health Connector, or do you go through Blue Cross or someone like them, like their own? So yeah, they feel like they're able to share those kind of thoughts. And it's a little bit better than trying to get advice through Facebook groups, because Facebook groups and Reddit just makes me cringe with the amount of bad advice that they give.
Yeah,
That place kind of scares me. So I'm glad that I have some local trusted folks that I can bounce ideas off of.
definitely. With the neuropsych component, It's interesting to me because my sense is that offering psychological testing evaluations can actually be very lucrative because you can charge $4,000 or $5,000 per assessment. But it doesn't seem like that's been the case for your business.
Well, it can, but it comes at a cost. I mean, you can talk to people that are able to churn out, these reports incredibly quickly. They're really just for confirming or not confirming like a diagnosis here or there. They're not going in depth to really describe a person's unique cognitive fingerprint. And for us, when we get that question, the referral question saying like, okay, like I'm actually struggling with these tasks or these areas, we want to paint a very clear descriptive picture. And if we're doing it through insurance company, they're only going to reimburse us like $1,300. Like, you can't do the hours for the advanced testings. You can't just pull whatever you want and give it to them because it all comes at a cost. So we have like, it's very small and boutique, but we feel like we can pull any sort of test. We have different levels of autism focused or like brief ADHD assessments at lower costs to kind of like mitigate that price point, because around here it's all out of pocket only. And if it is through insurance, I've never had a report sent to me through a managed that's been okay through managed care that has told the whole story, that a person didn't have to pay out of pocket for to figure out the rest. That's the reason why I had to go and create a whole new LLC for it. I wasn't going to be constrained by the restrictions of managed care.
Right. You were saying earlier, it's not like kind of work that you like to be doing anyway. Like as someone with ADHD, just like writing and reading a bunch of reports all day probably isn't very enjoyable.
No, no. But like for individuals with kind of like that have incredible high moral compasses and, that are psychologists, they love to write a good testing report because it very much shows how the systems that are here have been oppressive to these folks. And how a lot of this is like the frustration and the depression and the anxiety comes out from the system because people aren't able to integrate properly into it. It's like, you give people this, tell them that they need to fit into this jigsaw, but they're not the right piece. It's a real problem. But I think that the answer to the whole neuropsych thing for us, at least, is service-based, not-for-profit. I think that's just the way to go, mainly because it shows that we're not here for money, we're here for a service. And we can still kind of like support all of our clinicians and the business on its own. So I think that's something I need to integrate, but I just have so many irons in the fire right now. It's like you get
Right.
so carried away with this, and then you have to figure out what the 5-year plan actually is or the 10-year plan.
Yeah. And you've grown the practice now to 30
Yeah.
staff, which is pretty incredible. When you think about your own values as a business owner, what are they?
Compassion, authenticity, attunement. I think you treat a person like a person, you make their world understandable. And if you aren't going to be therapeutic, always be freaking fun. Make this space feel safe for people to explore some of the hardest aspects of their world. Luckily, like therapy kind of primes you to do that. But like it's so easy to be a lazy owner and like forget that every single staff member has their own worlds and they're trying to hold all of this and they have their own individual wants and needs. And who am I to step in and say, like, are you sure that's a need and not a want? No, I got to understand what the story is behind it. So the longer that I get to be around my staff and get to know them as people, I get to understand what really truly not just motivates them, but makes their world feel like it makes sense in what they're doing. And if I'm able to figure that out, that's not just the most gratifying feeling in the world, like being able to provide a space that they can do that in, but it gives you a leg up to understand, okay, like, yeah, this ask is completely reasonable, especially now that I know exactly what they're coming from. And yeah, like, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I need to tweak a policy or a procedure here or there. I think that if you are going to grow, you have to think about, okay, how many people can I have that relationship with? Because it is finite. And I think it is like 30 for us. So I like, this is like, I always had like a soft cap at 25, But I want to know, like, yeah, I want to know, I want to have people that I enjoy being around, and that we don't have that sterile environment here, and people have fun.
How do you do that? Like, how do you build relationships with 30 people? Do you have processes in place? Do you guys do retreats? Like, how do you build those relationships?
We actually have like a family dinner at the local on Wednesday where we're just gonna all go out, have lunch, or have dinner and celebrate, making it through most of the academic calendar and priming them up for the summer, the switch in the schedule, understanding how to bump up your utilization during those slow periods, but also like other little things too. Like we have like a WhatsApp group chat, and it's formal. We'll have memes being sent in there, therapy memes, which are great. A couple herd ones pop up from time to time. We'll have that. We'll have people be asking like, "Hey, I need someone. Does anyone know any referrals out in Minnesota?" Or I'm having difficulty with a client. Is anyone free for a minute? And if you just create that space, therapists know how to use it and they want it. And that doesn't matter if you're working telehealth or in person, you can still have those nice kind of neighborly chats with your coworkers. That's been huge. And on top of that, like a lot of like group consultations, supervisions, things like that. That's I think the bread and butter behind some of the cultural fabric.
It sounds simple, but just treating staff like human beings goes a long way. I remember when I was at the Gottman Institute, the CEO of the company would call every staff member on their birthday. And that was just like a thing that he did. So he must have had it saved in his calendar, but he would like call you on your birthday. And he like still calls me on my birthday. I haven't worked there in 5 years. He still calls me. And that's like just, it's not a ton of time for him, right? He has to remember to do that. And I'm sure he's really busy, but it's just like a 15-minute conversation once a year makes such a huge difference. So thinking about that, like what are ways that I can make my people feel, supported and like I see them. And it sounds like, safety, creating like a safe space is also great too. And you just create an environment where people want to come to work. That's, not just like a job that they have to put up with.
No, and like life comes with its wins and losses, and it's kind of your job to be there too for everyone. And always think like that. I think the best piece of advice that I've learned is there's never a problem at first. There's like areas of support and accommodate. And if you aren't reaching out to everyone and like creating that culture, like, okay, this is a place that affirms, protects, and supports and, finds even accommodations and is very liberal with like, hey, let's look for accommodations. You're not going to have people that fear coming into work. You're not going to have people that fear going over like the numbers and saying like, okay, like this is your churn rate, this is your retention rate, this is your utilization rate. They don't fear the numbers if you like teach them what they mean and how they represent good things too. I think the whole punitive thing, like we see that enough in our work, like it doesn't work. So stop it and find ways to do personal touches, like calling someone on their birthday, or
Right.
if you have, or just finding like a client on the roster, someone that you've never talked to before that's like in your practice, and reach out to them. Just be like, hey, I'm the owner. Just want to see how everything's going. I just want to make sure that you're feeling taken care of and supported here. It goes a long way. It goes a huge way, especially now that you have to think, okay, is this newsletter been ran through ChatGPT? Is there any human touches to this? Or we need more human
Right.
touches in our work. And especially in this work. God, come on.
Yes, I love that. I wasn't even thinking about that framing, but kind of in this era of automation and AI, I think it's even more important to be human, especially as a business owner. I am curious. So Wellesley is in the Boston area, which means there's a ton of like highly educated people. There's a bunch of universities. There's also a bunch of hospitals and practices. How do you compete in a market that is very crowded? How do you stand out?
You probably get this answer from everyone. If you create a space that the clinician can fully attune to the patient, take off the front end and the back end of the work, just create the meat being the therapy as much as possible for as long as possible. And then you hire clinicians that are able to be attuned for that time, that don't have the threats of burning out, that are reliable and are well resourced themselves psychologically. The rest just comes in. I mean, that's when you put high quality work together and then your name gets out there. And like every community, it still is very much word of mouth in this field. So that means a lot. What I love about it is that the word on the streets is a hell of a lot different than the words that you get on like a Facebook review or a review. So when you get that kind of organic sign of approval or seal of approval, that's when you know you've made a dent in your neighborhood and you can really call yourself a reliable staple of the community.
And are you working with clients who are mostly in Wellesley, or do you get clients from like across Massachusetts or even other states virtually?
Yeah, so we try to meet the need where it is. So right now, like a big issue has been trying to find pediatric care for behavioral health. So we've been trying to hire up as many like pediatric therapists as possible. We also know that's kind of like high burnout work. And because you're dealing not just with children, you're not dealing with children just like with acting out behavior, you're also having to deal with the family system, the school system. So like making sure that we have clinicians that are coming on with pediatric cases that also understand what role they're signing up for and how to supplement their caseload with opportunities for breaks and paying them well because this work is incredibly valuable. So we try to meet those needs. We also have a lot of folks that love working with the college age population, and they're great because they're smart and full of resources and are flexible and tend to fix themselves. So luckily, you swing a cat and you'll hit a college around here in Massachusetts. So all it takes is a couple calls to figure out who their social worker is or who does referrals. And again, a human touch. For us, mail campaign over email campaign has been more effective. Who would have thought? I feel like you can't ignore the complete digital picture, nor can you like ignore the old way. And I think you spoke to me about it like, hey, sometimes you just got to show up with donuts and flyers. And it worked. So thanks for that tip, Mike.
Duncan, especially. All right, we're getting to the end here. That actually tees me up very nicely. I'm excited for this one. I have a few rapid fire questions for you to close us out. First one is, what is your Duncan order?
Oh God, I drink like an idiot. So I drink iced coffee,
Of
black,
course.
less ice, like a
Yeah.
psychopath.
It's a New England thing. I don't know if it's a New England thing or a Boston thing, but it's like everyone drinks iced coffee. Even if it's 12 degrees below zero, it's freezing cold, snowing. You're going to go to Dunkin', get your iced coffee.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna have it taste like an ice cream sundae either. I just want it to just be
Right.
pure and disgusting, and I want to put it in my body as quick as possible because I'm exhausted.
Hot or cold lobster roll?
Oh God, hot. Nothing beats butter on like a delicious brioche and some really good lobster claw.
So good. Do you have a favorite in the area?
Yeah, so I would have to say that my favorite is it's in Chatham, Max in Chatham.
That's
It's a
Cape Cod.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
God. But around here, I would say, oh God, who made a really good one? Island Creek Oyster in Fenway. They have a
They're
really good
good.
one.
Yeah, I've had Eventide. Have you had Eventide?
No.
They're good too. Yeah, there's one in Portland, Maine, but I think they have one in Boston too. So, any New England folks, definitely go check those out. What does success mean to you as a business owner?
Oh God, I'm a people pleaser at heart. It means that I'm able to see everyone's point of view, even if I don't agree with it. And people still have faith in me, even if I am disagreeing with them, and that we're going to make a really good decision and it's going to work out. And sometimes that means, buckling up for a few months or a year. And if someone is able to have that faith in me, I feel like it's successful. The fact that they're able to put their life in my hands for that short amount of time or not short, in a lot of cases. So I think that is success for me.
As a business owner, what's the best compliment that you can give to someone?
It's the third party compliments. I think one of the best ways I compliment my staff is when I'm able to make a direct referral for them because I can sing their praises. I can tell you exactly what they do really well. And it doesn't feel like Sooner or later, they're going to hear like the client or the person say like, oh, Bryan spoke very highly of you. It means a little bit more when it comes from like a third party versus like if I tell my employees like, I'm so proud of the way that you handled this case. Like, yeah, that's
Right.
great. But I think those like that third party kind of affirmation is one of the best things that you could do for being like a leader.
Love that. And then finally, what's one thing that you want therapists to take away from this conversation?
Loosen up, see what you can do with your own worries and anxieties, see what they're trying to teach you, see what they're trying to hide from you. And you should appraise yourself a little bit better when it comes into having faith in yourself, because if you made it past the licensure, you have jumped through several different hurdles. As long as you continue to hold near and dear your ethical obligations, everything else just falls in place. So please just trust yourself a little bit more.
Love it. Bryan, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Where can folks connect with you if they're interested in learning more about kind of what you do or referring clients to you or maybe even applying for a job?
Yeah, just check out our website, www.wellesleycw.com. And if not, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, not so much anymore. Blue Sky, not the other ones. They're personal.
Catch you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks, Bryan.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Herd Business School, brought to you by Herd, the financial management platform for therapists. To get the class notes for this week's episode, go to joinherd.com/podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll see you in the next class.